Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday night live stream for Collinge for President / Student Loan Justice. I hope everybody's doing well out in the world. My name is Alan Collinge. I am running for president, and I will cancel all federally owned student loans by executive order. I will get it through the Supreme Court. I will replace the federal student loan program. I will compel the colleges and universities to reimburse the taxpayer anything that they may be short, probably be nothing, by the way. The taxpayers have made a king's ransom on federal student loans. It's time for student loans to go away in this country. And if you have student loans, whatever you think my chances are to win the presidency, you need to get behind my campaign. We are the only thing going, believe me. So I hope everybody's doing well out in the world. A couple of things I want to talk about quickly before I get into the topic of the night. The campaign is going well, collingeforpresident.com. I hope you'll go there and donate, by the way. We're hoping that we can raise $5,000 pretty quickly so that we will qualify for Federal Elections Commission's reporting requirements. It will kind of get us on the map. So please help with that. One other thing, we are going to be trying to get into an independent debate put on by a group called freeandequal.org. It's a voting thing. There's like probably 50 people who are also running for president who are trying to get into this debate. I'm going to have a link for everyone tomorrow where they can go and vote for me. We should easily be able to get into the top 6 if even not even half the people in our group were to vote for us. Right now, I think the leading vote getter has around 100,000 votes, but below that, it's like 20, 15,000, 10,000. Right now, even 6,000 votes would get us into this debate. So it would be a good thing. It's free to vote. You can do it over your cell phone. Anyways, get ready for that. And just so you know, the newest news in the world on student loans that we discovered that nobody is reporting, so you heard it here first, and you may only hear it here. 80% of all federal student loan borrowers are not making payments on their loans today. And even if you don't count the people who are in college, so really probably shouldn't be paying, still 78% of federal student loan borrowers are not making payments on their loans. These loans will be canceled, ladies and gentlemen. That is a mathematical fact at this point. The only question is whether they get canceled quickly and cleanly, or whether they get canceled after decades of dystopian, very dark and grim and fraught couple of decades, and your death triggers the cancellation. I don't want that second thing. I want that first thing. We don't have to put up with this nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. The founding fathers are on our side. If you have student loans, you should be very proud to be supporting my campaign. Tell everybody you know with student loans about this campaign. So there's another story I'm seeing in the media right now that's an obvious campaign against us. You can see the little shadow of my little kitten in the rear. I'm going to have some kittens up for adoption pretty soon, by the way. Sorry, I digress. There's another campaign, a media campaign being launched against us, ladies and gentlemen. The story is that, hey, student loan borrowers are choosing not to pay because they're protesting. And guys, I'm telling you, that's complete, pardon my French, that's bullshit. Maybe there's a few conscientious objectors to repaying their loans out there, but the overwhelming majority of people cannot pay. The pandemic pause ended. Inflation sucked up every spare nickel. Now repayments are back on. Even before the pandemic, ladies and gentlemen, nearly 60% of all federal student loan borrowers were not paying. Now it's gone up to 80%. I think it's going to go up to 85, maybe 87 or 8% ultimately. There's always going to be a core group of scared sheeple people, I call them, who will pay. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult anybody out there. I know everybody's got their own deal. I know some people do have jobs where they may very well lose their job if they don't pay and that sort of thing. But I'm just telling you guys, if you are repaying your federal student loans right now, you are in the vast minority of people, because most people cannot pay. It's not a strike. It's not a protest. What it is, it's the end of the federal student loan program. So, and whatever your opinion on that may be, I know we have some pretty oppositional people who watch our live streams from time to time. Whatever your opinion is, doesn't matter. The loans will not be paid. The loans will be canceled. Get that through your thick skull, and then we can move forward. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about the second most pressing issue of my campaign. Really, it's probably the first for the country, and that is taxing the very wealthy. I'm going to share my screen with you. I just rolled out this issue on our website. Read it for yourself. Very important, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully you realize that we are now living in a time that we have never seen before in our country in terms of the massive gap in wealth between the richest among us and the poorest among us. And just a few statistics you probably should know. You know, the 10 richest men doubled their wealth during the pandemic. Like, it's accelerating, guys. The gap between the rich and the poor is only accelerating. And ladies and gentlemen, this is very unhealthy. Now, listen, the very wealthy in this country, by and large, they didn't earn that wealth. You know, most of them inherited that wealth, quite frankly. And even the businessmen, you know, we're not talking about the great innovators, the Henry Fords and many other great inventors and entrepreneurs and industrialists, you know, Andrew Carnegie. The wealthiest people in the world today generally got that way through the manipulation of our tax laws and shameless profiteering at the taxpayer's expense through by directing government contracts towards their companies, corporations. So, you know, I know it's kind of a natural thing for people to all of a sudden, gain a sort of knee-jerk respect and admiration for incredibly wealthy people. But I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's not deserved. It's not earned. These people, by and large, came by their outrageous wealth in a very easy way. And it's not healthy, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just say, it is very unhealthy. It's very dangerous for a country when 90+% of the wealth is concentrated in the hands of 3,000 or 4,000 people. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but tell me if you agree. Have you noticed that people who become astonishingly, outrageously, fantastically wealthy tend to get a little bit, trying to be kind here, batshit crazy? Have you not noticed that when you sort of jump over the 10 a millionaire, even hundreds of millionaire into the billionaire category, do these people not start thinking of themselves as kings, if not maybe even like demigods or, masters of the universe? I have noticed that tends to be the case. And, particularly as our nation's technology becomes more and more capable of concentrating not only wealth power, economic power, but actual manipulative power, power of, influence power, like that's kind of real power. As it becomes easier for the very wealthiest among us, these tech titans, etc., to use technology against the citizens, you can see why it is all the more important that we address this issue of wealth disparity in this country. And it's not, and let me just bring you through a couple of slides. As I said, the wealthiest in this country, they typically didn't make their money by inventing new things and, being creative and industrial, entrepreneurial and so forth. By and large, they accrued much of their wealth from the taxpayer. Like, look at Donald Trump. His family made their fortune on the Section 8 housing code, whereby the federal government would subsidize housing for poor people. So the Trump family went and built a whole bunch of apartments. And they made most of their fortune not on hotels and, casinos and golf courses, but rather on Section 8. And so too is it for so many of the other very wealthy people in this country. Even Elon Musk, who I think probably borders on one of the more legitimate sort of creative entrepreneurial people, he would not have been able to do Tesla without very generous government subsidies, carve outs, etc. His SpaceX would not be anything. It would be a finger drawing in the sand, but for massive government business and subsidies. And look what this has done. And this is one of the most important points. Look at what this has done to our national debt, ladies and gentlemen. We have to, whether you're a conservative or a liberal, I think most people have to agree that the national debt, as the rich have gotten richer, the national debt has probably very closely followed that prosperity. Look at what happened between 1920 and 1945, right? The Roaring 20s, culminating in 1929 stock market crash. Wealth disparity in this country is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right, worse today than it was in 1929. And look at how that is reflected in the national debt. So there's a very interesting level past which things get very, very dangerous. And that is when a nation's debt exceeds the gross domestic product of that nation. So the value of all goods and services made, sold, bought in the country. We reached about 125% of GDP right around 1945. And that was due to the war. It was due to government spending in the New Deal programs, etc. Mostly the war. But then look at the comparison to today. It's almost the same curve, is it not? And I mean, we've all lived this history. At least if you're 40 years old or more, you've seen it. We're at the same spot now, guys. We are at the very same spot. Our national debt is just absolutely out of control. It is a national threat, and it's got to be addressed. I hearken back to the common sense of our, I don't know if you call them forefathers or ancestors, but LBJ, right? Or no, starting with FDR and the U.S. government, like the leaders and the industrialists and even the wealthy people, they all came to a rational solution for this problem in 1945. They increased taxes on the wealthy to believe it or not, 94% for the wealthiest among us. Now there were carve outs, and ultimately I think the real tax rate was around 72 or 3% for the wealthiest among us. But that's what they did, ladies and gentlemen, and they didn't do it for a couple of years. Here's the graph. They did it for nearly 20 years. The top tax rate was over 90% for the wealthiest among us from 1945 to the early 60s. So we're talking 18 years. Did the wealthiest among us pay 70+% of their income in taxes? Now, did the wealthy bitch and moan and complain? I'm sure they did. I was actually looking for articles over the weekend, trying to find examples of that. I actually didn't find that many. But I'm sure they cried bloody murder for a while. But how did the nation's economy do after the wealthiest among us were required to pay a 90% tax, a real tax of 73 or so percent? I think most people would agree. In fact, 100% of everyone must agree the nation did fantastically well. Businesses still thrived. IBM, Ford Motors, GM, they did extraordinarily well. Normal people did extraordinarily well, fantastically well. It was the best economy we've ever seen in this country from 1945 to 1963. And, let me go back to these tax rates for a minute to show you. And, even after 18 years, when they lowered the tax from 90%, they only went down to about 70%. And that 70% tax rate was in place for another, 20 years. So the outrageously low tax rates that we see today, ladies and gentlemen, that is not normal for this country. It is not normal. It is not natural. It is artificially low. And lo and behold, we see what happens when that happens. The national debt goes through the roof. And we can talk about social services suffering a different night. I'm not going to talk about spending tonight. I'm going to talk about spending on my next new issue rollout. This is not right, ladies and gentlemen. It cannot be continued. It cannot. And ladies and gentlemen, the two parties that are in power right now, they have absolutely no desire or intentions of addressing this problem meaningfully. The Democrats will say they do, but they're full of shit. Pardon my French. Like the best guy among the Democrats calling for something like what I'm calling for, Bernie Sanders. How has the Democratic Party treated Bernie? He's basically a laughing stock at this point. He's what an inspiring old man. Now go away, old man. Like that's the sense of that I get of how the DNC is treating Bernie Sanders these days. So if you're looking to the Democrats or the Republicans to solve this wealth disparity problem, you'll be looking forever. You're looking in the wrong place. They will not solve this. And by the way, even some very deep, dark Republican hitmen like Steve Bannon, he actually has been saying lately that the wealthiest among us need to start paying massively higher taxes. So here is my platform as your president of the United States. This is what I am going to do on this issue. We need new tax brackets in this country, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, the top tax bracket stops at like about $600,000 a year. We need to freeze that tax bracket where it is. So if you're earning between $578,000 a year and $2 million, your taxes are not going to go up on my administration. They're going to stay the same, 37%. However, here's what I'm doing, guys. I'm adding 3 new tax brackets. I'm adding a tax bracket for the lowest level of what I would consider to be very wealthy, and that's earnings of $2 million to $25 million a year. You're going to pay half. And yeah, there will be exemptions and stuff. You probably won't actually pay half. You'll probably pay like 42 or 3%. But you're going to pay. You're going to pay. That's $2 million to $25 million. If you're making $25 million to $100 million, that's beyond very wealthy in my book. That is unnaturally wealthy. That's what I would call that. If you're earning between $25 million and $100 million, you're going to be taxed at a 70% tax rate. And yeah, okay, with exemptions, it'll be something like 62.3%. But you're going to pay. And you're going to like it, by the way. I think most wealthy people need to have their wealth taken from them just to keep their wits about them, to keep them grounded in reality, quite frankly. So that's $25 million to $100 million. If you're making $100 million or more, I'm sorry, you didn't earn that. And I would say that to all the categories in red there. You didn't earn it. It's not your money. You don't deserve it. You got to give it back. Period. I put those people to 90%. And quite frankly, I think I probably should have put 94% up there, which takes us right back to what we actually did in this country from 1945 to 1963. You're going to pay 90% of that unearned wealth back into the kitty. And it's going to be used to pay down our national debt. But that's another discussion. I'm going to deal with our debt discussion at a later time. So that is my new tax structure. And everybody who's being honest would agree with me. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, many fantastically wealthy people in years and decades past have agreed that we need to be taxing our wealthy people far, far, far more than we are today. So now there are going to be some other modifications here, guys. Let me just bring you back to me here. Some other modifications. I'll bring that back at the very end just so you can see it again. I think we need to save Social Security. And again, I don't want to talk about saving social programs, etc., until a later date. But we need to eliminate the income cap for Social Security and Medicare payments. So right now it's around 7%. But if you earn over $150,000 a year, you don't have to pay almost any of that. And that's ridiculous. The richer you get, the more you should be taxed. It's not like, oh, I now earn 200 grand a year, so now I don't have to pay any Social Security tax on everything above that. That's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. We need to eliminate that cap so that no matter how much you earn over $150,000 a year, you're still going to have to pay Social Security tax at the same rate. And by the way, the Social Security tax is included in the above increases in tax rates that I'm talking about. So we're not going to tax the wealthiest at 105%. We're not going to do that. So it's not actual, murder for the wealthiest. That didn't sound right, did it? That sounded disturbing. So I didn't mean that. But also, and this is just maybe down in the nickel and dime category, but we need to repeal that estate tax break that Trump did. Inheriting money is absolutely I would say it should be the most taxable event. And, if you inherit a couple $1,000,000, I agree, it shouldn't be taxed, right? You want to keep the family home in the family, that kind of thing. So I'm right there with you. Right now, a man and a wife have an exemption of $10 million. So if you die and you have an estate of you and your wife die, you have your combined estate is $10 million, and you pass that down to your kids, they don't have to pay taxes on that. $10 million is a pretty nice, pretty healthy nest egg in my book. I think it is towards the upper limit of what I would consider achieving the American dream. So you work hard, you make $1 million a year, you accrue $10 million in wealth. Good for you. That's the American dream. I'm not going to tax that. But once we get above that, sorry guys, you got to pay tax. That's it. Now the biggest counterpoint, the argument against everything that I just said, that the wealthy people will flood the zeitgeist with, because they own the media, guys. Don't forget, wealthy people own the media, and they will try very hard to hypnotize you into believing that, all the rich people are going to send all their money overseas. Well, no. I don't think they will. If you're sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars like Elon Musk, are you going to fly your money to the Cayman Islands? No. And look, again, I harken back to World War II. During World War II, when all these countries started being invaded by the Nazis, where did the royal families, the wealthiest people in those countries, what did they do with their wealth? They sent it to America, because this was a safe place to keep their wealth, where they could be reasonably sure that it wouldn't be stolen by some tin pot dictatorship. That will continue on my watch as president. We will still be the most respected, financially secure state on the globe, nation on the globe, on the globe. And by the way, guys, when countries lose control of the wealthiest among them and they become, fascist type states, when the wealthy take control of the sovereign government, that doesn't attract wealth to those countries. International investors are like, whoa, something is going wrong with America. We do not want to invest. We do not want to, buy American dollars. Yeah. We knew that in the 1950s. We knew that as a country, guys. We knew that fiscal sanity, common sense, conservatism, and the policies that were enacted in the 1945, 1955, 65, that was what would continue our dominance, our respect on the world stage. So yes, I would put some tax penalties in for people trying to send their money to Switzerland or Sweden or the Cayman Islands or any other place. They made that money here. That money should stay here. They made it in our markets, etc. Now, finally, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry that I went way too long tonight, and I apologize for that. Finally, guys, we have to start taxing not only the wealthiest individuals and corporations in this country, we need to start taxing where they are hiding their money, where they are sheltering their money in this country. And that includes the colleges. It also includes family trusts and other non-governmental organizations. Many of them are 501c3s. But let me just give you a little taste of what I'm talking about. The colleges, for example, if you look at probably 80% of the colleges, the wealthier, the well-to-do colleges, not only the Ivy League, but like I said, probably 4,500 or so. Like most colleges in this country have accrued massive levels of wealth since, let's say, the year 2000. So in the past 25 or so years. If you look at the endowments of the colleges, all of the colleges, they've gone up astonishingly, maybe even on a par with that national debt graph that I showed you earlier since 2000. I'm sure the curves are probably very similar. But ladies and gentlemen, over and above, completely separate from college endowments, the colleges have also been squirreling away. They've been, squirreling away another big pot of wealth. And this shows up on their 990 filings, their IRS 990 filings, as both unreserved and reserved assets. This is another little hiding place on the books of the colleges where they hide wealth. I would urge you to look at the 990 filing or maybe even the annual report of your college, assuming they're a nonprofit and assuming they file a 990. I think most of them publish public annual statements, annual reports. And you will see, and I'm just rattling some numbers off the top of my head, but between 2000 and 2015, for example, and I'm probably going to get these numbers wrong, so I shouldn't say it, but the unreserved and reserved assets of the colleges went from like very, very little, like very tiny, inconsequential entries on the balance sheet to billions, tens of billions of dollars in many instances. Like the University of Texas has managed, and this is as of 2014, they managed to build up $15 billion in unreserved and reserved assets. So that's like basically liquid cash. Maybe it's some real estate holdings and some investment holdings, other things. But the point is, guys, the colleges have made out like thieves in Alibaba's cave or whatever you want to call it. And we're not even talking about their endowments. We're talking about different pots of money. The rector of the University of Virginia, Helen Dragas, she retired from the University of Virginia and she blew the whistle. She called it a slush fund. And in 2014 or 15, University of Virginia had amassed around $1 or $2 billion. I would almost be willing to bet that if you looked at the University of Virginia's balance, their annual report today, you would probably find that their unreserved and their reserved assets has gone from 3.1 billion to, I'm guessing, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 billion dollars. That's a lot of money for a college. So guys, we need to do a wealth tax on these trusts, these colleges, these other institutions that are just massively overfunded. Now, the last thing that I'm going to say tonight is, guys, don't worry about taxing the wealthy. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. They'll be more than fine. In fact, the wealthiest 1% in this country combined, last time I checked, it's probably higher now, owned $36 trillion in wealth. Like, that's our entire national debt. So theoretically, we could pull a Fidel Castro on those assholes, take everything they have, and our national debt would be down to zero. I'm not proposing that we do that. I want to preserve entrepreneurship, capitalism, what made America great. I want to preserve all those things, but we've got to get back to reality, harken back to the wisdom of the people that ran this country in the 40s and 50s, do the common sense thing, and start taxing the snot out of the wealthy. I hope you agree with me. I hope something that I've said tonight echoes with you. I'm running for president to cancel student loans. There's no doubt about that, guys. But this country has got some far bigger problems that must be addressed. And, shame on almost all the Democrats, maybe except for Marianne Williamson, for not screaming this from the rooftops. Shame on the Republicans, too. Because everybody in Congress and the president, and everybody in Washington, D.C. knows that what I am saying is true. So I hope you will support my campaign. I hope you'll tell everybody with student loans about this campaign. And I hope that as the weeks and months go into summer and fall, I hope that you will remember that you actually have a candidate for president that you can vote for and feel good about. So until next time, I wish you Godspeed. I urge you to please support, get behind my campaign in any way you can. Donate would be particularly helpful. Join our Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter. Stay in touch with this campaign, because I suspect that some very interesting and good and hopefully great things will be happening with this campaign in the weeks and months to come. So good luck. Godspeed. God bless. And God bless America.